welcome to CRT Sound System. We've got a little mini episode this week. We're talking about Battle of Olympus, and I'm here with Reese as always. Reese, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be doing another Nintendo episode.
Yeah, it seems that we're sort of gravitating towards Nintendo games for these little mini episodes.
It it feels appropriate. It's tough to get. There's so many of them are loops, and
mm,
it's tough to fill up. A proper big episode.
yeah,
Not a lot of info usually on lots of them. We could talk about the composer, but you can just be like, this is the forest level, stuff like that.
yeah.
And I've been watching Jeff Gerstmann, formerly of Giant Bomb before Embracer Group, destroyed that outlet. Is doing a YouTube series where he ranks every Nintendo game.
Okay.
So he sits and he plays it for about an hour or so. Depending on the game.
Yeah,
Taboo has less to go through than Mario.
yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. But it sort of reignited my love once again for the Nintendo games. And you hear the soundtracks, and there's so many old school bangers. Jeff Gerstmann is always freaking out about the Konami drums, and now that I've heard that, I am too. So I'm excited to go back to this, and I'm also excited to go back to this because I know this game, but I didn't remember the title, and this is one of
Okay.
those things
Interesting.
that I've been waiting for him to play so I could remember it, because he played like Athena and something else, and I was like, no, but there's like a Greek gods one that's
Okay. Interesting.
that I loved as a kid, but I don't remember it. So yeah, I'm excited.
Awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
how are you?
Yeah, I'm
How's
pretty good.
your music listening life?
Not much going on at the moment, really. Just yeah. I was like, it's actually been a pretty solid week for me as far as releases go. Like, there's a new Tom Veck, there's new like Last Dinosaurs, and there's a bunch of other
Mhm.
stuff that released in the last week that I need to get around to listening to. New Billie Eilish, I think, just came out on like Friday. So I need to listen to that. It's a bit of a busy week music wise.
Are the Last Dinosaurs a reference to Denver, the Last Dinosaurs?
No, they're an Australian rock band.
Mhm.
The I believe the name is actually a reference to the Pillows, the guys who did the FLCL soundtrack.
Okay.
I think that's a reference to one of their songs. If it's not, it's a weird coincidence because they have a lot of very similar sounding songs as well.
Okay.
And like the two main guys are like Japanese heritage. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, I would be surprised if they weren't fans of the Pillows, and it was all just a weird coincidence.
All right. Well, uh, I assume regardless, they're our friend and a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, they're just a band that sort of disappeared for a while and then came back with some new music in the last like week or so,
mhm.
which is always fun. But yeah, we'll talk a bit about Battle of Olympus. So yeah, you've obviously played it, so Reese. That was going to be my first question anyway. But have you ever beaten it? What's your sort of experience with the game prior?
I almost certainly didn't beat it as a child.
Yeah.
Usually the only games I could get through were the games that sort of held your hands through Nintendo in Nintendo Power. I got through kind of like the biggest ones. Zelda, Metroid was probably the only thing I ever truly accomplished as a child. But I'm
uh,
I'm certain that uh, I there was something I didn't understand in the game at some point. It just kept dying and reloading. and couldn't be asked with the password, so or whatever the continue. I forget about it. But I
Mm.
remember it had a very kind of like cohesive action, um, kind of Zelda 2 vibe.
Very Zelda 2, I think, yeah. And I
Which,
think the developers specifically were like, we just wanted to make a Zelda 2.
and I'm a huge Zelda 2 defender,
Same.
and loved it as a kid. So it was fun reviewing it. I didn't dig too much into the game again,
Yeah.
before this. Just wanted to hang out, but it's one of those. I feel like Nintendo gets a weird rap. Either people are kind of like rapturous about the entire thing, or they're just like the only good game is Mario. Is sort of like, I feel, usually the what people go with, and I
Mm.
feel like there was a lot of shit, but it was interesting shit. I think a lot
Yeah.
of the time, like you think of something like fucking Chiller. Like, I came across that as a kid. God, that fucking ruined my brain. I don't know if you're familiar with Chiller, but
No, I'm
it's
not.
Chiller was a horror kind of like light gun game that was like very, very much like, there's a reason it's unlicensed, is because you're just like going through like horrible kind of like horror scenes, like sort of like nude people being tortured, and then you shoot their heads off or you shoot the guillotine, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Um, but there's a lot of kind of like good games in there that are kind of, because of the difficulty of the system and
Mm.
just of the time, that people bounced off of or don't have a strong memory of, because it's inscrutable. Something like the Guardian Legend, which is, I think, an all-timer game. But
Mm.
it is impossible to understand what you're doing unless you look it up on GameFAQs. And so I don't necessarily think it's that inscrutable, but I feel like there's a wide array of great Nintendo games
Yeah.
that don't really get the maybe shouldn't be heralded in the same breath as Mario, but I think I think we should all take our estimation of Nintendo down just a little bit and appreciate some of these other games.
Yeah.
Curious, I don't even realize I was bad this run. I don't even know who published it or anything, but very
I
naughty.
think it was published by Broderbund, who were like a lot and now long dead company, but um, yeah, actually in Europe it was published by Nintendo, but like it was this game is very weird. It's like, as I mentioned, it's specifically inspired by Zelda 2, and they just wanted to put like an ancient Greece sort of skin on it, essentially.
Mhm.
So like, if you can imagine Zelda 2, you can imagine this game. So it's all sort of your fairly basic plot is just that you have to rescue your girlfriend from Hades, who has
Mhm.
stolen her for some reason. Um, and you just travel through ancient Greece, and you meet with with like the Greek gods, and you like you get upgrades, and you get all that kind of stuff from interacting with the gods. And you just sort of explore towns and dungeons and things like that. It's a very competent game, I would say. Like the game plays pretty well. I actually quite recently beat it for the first time, so
Mhm.
um, literally early this year, I just decided I was going to finally play through it, because this was a game that I had on my Nintendo, and um, played a ton of it, but I was never quite able to beat it. Um, for a combination of the fact that the game was quite difficult. It's pretty tough. There's a lot of bullshit in it.
Yeah.
um, there's also the fact that it doesn't have a save system other than your passwords, um, which would be fine, except for the fact the passwords are almost unreadable due to using a really weird script on the English version. So, like 9 times out of 10, if I wrote down a password, I would not have wrote it down correctly, or when I was transcribing it back into the game, I would not have read my writing correctly. Um, so I don't want to entirely blame the game because I do have terrible handwriting, but I do remember there was a lot of characters that were just super ambiguous. They're ambiguous in a standard font, but for the weird sort of Greek style font that they decided to use,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
just made a lot of characters extra ambiguous. Um,
Well, it was hard, Usually these were kids playing these games
yeah,
too, and so it could certainly be tough to keep track of all of that as well.
yeah,
I definitely know what you're talking about.
yeah,
Unless it was sort of like the super big passwords for like Metroid or Punch Out. It's just like I lost track of them immediately.
yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Um, the I forgot what I was going to say. No, the oh yeah, I remember now. It was one of those games as well. I don't know if you ever did this, where like, because of that password system and everything, I would try to sort of leave my Nintendo turned on all the time,
oh
um,
yeah,
and just sort of hope that something didn't happen to like ruin the game. That it could just somebody would bump the console and sort of freeze the game, or the lights would flicker or something like that, or the game itself would just decide that it didn't want to continue running because it had been left on for 12 hours straight.
exactly,
um,
exactly.
you know
Or mom got wind of what you were doing and started turning it off.
yeah, things like
That's
that, yeah.
um,
So for that reason, as I say, I never finished it, but with the help of save states on my analog pocket, I was able to finish it this year, and I was quite pleased to do so. It was just one of those things where it was like, I've I've been playing this game for 30 years. I'm glad to just finally mark that off my backlog.
congratulations.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a really, really fun game. And the soundtrack is one of those ones that, like, it always stuck with me over the years as well. I'd always go back and listen to a couple of tracks from it here and there. Um, so the soundtrack composer for this is a man by the name of Kazuo Sawa.
Uh-huh.
Um, what what they've actually done is mostly Kunio-kun stuff by the looks of it here.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know which Kunio-kun games specifically. Um, it just has a list of them here, but I don't know which of these translate to what in English.
Sure.
Because not all of the Kunio-kun games came out here, and the ones that did all had completely different names to the point where you wouldn't have even known they were in the same series. Um, Unless you were like, oh wait, that art style is weirdly similar throughout these games for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I remember, the only one I actually remember playing as a kid was the soccer one on the Game Boy.
No, I
Um,
never played that.
yeah, that was the one I played a lot. But like when I first started getting into emulation in college, that's when I started discovering things like River City Ransom and so on as well.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what I was going to say. Is
yeah, that's the sort of,
he's
I think that's the main touching point for people in the West for that franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm.
it seems like it's another example of one of those kind of lunch pail uh, old school composers that he did a lot of games over about a 10-year period, and most of them
Mm.
um, are on like Game Boy or sort of like doing uh, you know PC 98 sort of like
Mm.
covers, stuff like that, or ports rather. Doing the port for the Ultima music for SNES, stuff like
Yeah,
that. So it's always really cool when we swing by one of these guys,
yeah,
and seems to be one of those guys that was very much, as well as a composer, was a programmer, sort of like
mm.
very like skilled and not just composing the music, but sort of like tracking it in there with in assembly or something like that, or just doing this whole sound programming for the game, that
Yeah,
sort of thing. So it's in the research I did do on him, it didn't seem like there was a ton of information out there about
No.
him. But I assume that it's with the breadth of his work that he's had a mastery over that old stuff. And that's the thing we keep on discovering is that from this era, there's just not a lot of information.
Yeah.
We just can never know. Yeah, and the other thing that I think that I really know it from is Populous.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't spot that
He
until
just did. I
just
guess
now.
he just did
Yeah.
the arrangements, but still.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Yeah, like I say, you can see a lot of PC 98 and Famicom stuff on it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I suppose the other thing to mention then is this is basically made by three people. Um,
Okay.
so aside from Kazuo Sawa, you had Yuka Horimoto was like the designer and programmer, and then Reiko Oshida was the artist and writer. Um, and they later married.
Nice.
um, but yeah, it's just like it's amazing that a game that is this competent and is this sort of solid in sort of came together in a pretty short time frame and was literally done by three people. It's it's kind of incredible to think back that people could do that back then.
Yeah.
Because even now, you get games that are made by one person or very very small teams, but they still take a long long time
Mm-hmm.
to actually come together and come out. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Absolutely.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
impressive.
That's really cool to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we'll jump into as is tradition with our mini episodes. We've just got one big block of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have the world map. I have Arcadia. I have Attica, town of Elyseus, caves of Argolis, Peloponnesus forest, dark cave, mountains of Phthia, Greek or Crete island maze, and then the Hades clear. So once you kill Hades, you get this little tune played. nice, fun little run through the game. Um,
Absolutely. Oh,
yeah,
that noise channel. Love the noise channel.
yeah,
Um,
it's something I've been listening to a lot of NES soundtracks for a couple of upcoming episodes,
mhm.
and yeah, just hearing the different ways different composers use the noise channel, and especially as you sort of get later into the life cycle of the Famicom and the NES, just the way people experiment with the noise channel is really really cool.
Yeah, it's here usually it's sort of some sort of percussion or bass accoutrement, but I really like it when people just use it to add like verve to the melody or
Mm.
some other aspect. Just like, damn, these pretend square wave guitars are rocking so hard. There's a noise channel involved. Oh, I love it. There needs to be more things. Just need to have an entire thing just to go. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's cool. The Mega Man 3 soundtrack in particular is really standing out to me recently. It's just like they were really cooking with the noise channel on that one. But yeah, it's a cool little soundtrack. As I say, it's quite short. There's a couple of songs that I didn't include, but for the most part, you pretty much heard all the songs you're going to hear in the game on that.
Hmm.
And there's like a good little mix of like sort of jaunty adventuring tunes and sort of ones that are a little bit more subtle or a little darker because you're exploring a cave or whatever. But they do a good job, I think, of sort of giving you a feeling for each of the different stages, and they all sound different enough that, like, if you enter an area, you hear the music straight away,
Hmm.
um, and you really just start to associate them really, really strongly in your brain, which is a good effect, and it helps with sort of exploring. Because there's no real actual map in the game. You just sort of and the way it's designed, sometimes what looks like a house could just be an entrance to another zone
Hmm.
for some reason. So like a lot of it is just sort of until you really learn the map, trial and error. But I found the music it sort of helps you sort of really strongly associate each area um, because like it is so sort of strongly tied to each zone's identity.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I do enjoy that last track as well, the Hades clear. So like you beat the last boss, and it starts off with this sort of epic reprise of the title theme,
Yeah.
and then just goes into this weird sort of little jaunty, upbeat sort of trotting along number.
Hmm.
It's a little bit incongruous, but it also is quite good. So I like
It,
that.
it definitely feel a lot of these tracks have a heroic journey feel.
Mm.
Very very classic mood it evokes, where you're just like, I don't have a strong memory of the game at this point, but I can imagine that little dude using items and making his way through the forest level or whatever. There's that one in there that has like a heroic flute vibe, and it's just
Mm.
like it's so much fun.
Yeah.
It is, the Nintendo is the sound chip I understand the best by far, and it's always interesting to try to kind of like piece it together in my not very music agile brain to see what they're putting together.
Mm.
But yeah, this is a really well put together soundtrack, and the sort of
Yeah.
things like all of these are things that are not terribly annoying to have loop for a while.
Yeah.
That's always the thing with it too, is that it's all wonderful, but it's sort of meant to kind of fade into the background as you focus on your platforming a little
Yeah,
bit.
and
And so I think it.
there's definitely parts in this game where you could be sitting in certain areas for quite a long time trying to grind.
Mhm.
So
Oh yeah.
it's good that the music itself is not super repetitive in those areas.
100%. One game I did emulate and play for a bit recently was Rygar, and that's a game that it feels very necessary to sit and grind for a bit for your
Mm.
for your power, and it needs it's like really heroic music. Otherwise, you just you're going to turn it off and put on the podcast or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's up there. It feels really really compelling.
Yeah, it's a good little soundtrack, and like I said, we probably never would have had reason to cover this in a full episode, even as part of like another topic.
Hmm.
Um, so I did want to do it as another NES game. Um, but
Absolutely.
yeah, no, that's I think that's about everything really on that. I don't want to have this episode run too long, really.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very exciting to cover the prequel for Hades too. So
yeah, it's gotta get on that SEO for the Hades too. Actually, now that I think of it.
exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, this has been another mini episode of CRT Sound System. Reese, what have you got to plug for us?
It's all in the link tree.
I'll post. I think the link tree should be in the show notes. If not, poke me and I'll put it in there. But I
Yeah,
should have it. I should have it saved by default on them. Yeah, and as for ourselves, links will be in the description as always. We're patreon.com/CRT Sound System. And yeah, that's about it, really. Thank you for listening to this short little episode.
yeah. Thanks so much for going Nintendo mode with us.
Yeah,
It is the one that it is the system that even though I kind of love some of the others, just sound chips more. This is the one that I understand in
yeah.
my viscera. So I like doing these.
Very good. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
later on.
So the last track is appropriately called Ending. Good night.